Jenny, welcome to another episode of Moonlore. Today we are looking at the upcoming new moon in Cancer. When is that happening?
Laurie, it's happening July 9th. In Eastern time, it's in the evening, 9:17 p.m.
All right, wonderful. Okay, so first thing we want to think about is the cycle between the sun and the moon. When we're talking about a new moon and a full moon, we're looking at the entire cycle between these two planets. All planets create cycles as they move through their orbits. And it's really easy to watch the sun and moon one because we can see it when we go out at night and we see the different phases, the different cycles of the moon. So what happens at the new moon?
Well, the new moon is when the cycle starts. And inherent is that it means that the previous cycle ends. And then you start this new cycle. You and I like to talk a lot about it being like this plant cycle. So the new moon corresponds to planting a new seed in the soil. Mm-hmm.
All right. So yeah, we plant a seed at the new moon. And with the new moon being in Cancer, we're going to plant a seed around kind of the ideas of what you think of with Cancer. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But at that, at the new moon, we plant the seed. And then it grows. You want to think a week after the new moon, you're at the first quarter phase, which is a time that we take action on the seed that we plant at the new moon. And then a week after that, we come to the full moon where we see the full illumination of what was planted. A week after that, we come to the last quarter moon, which we start to release the energy that's been growing now for 3 weeks. And then it closes out at the next new moon. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the cycle of the sun and the moon together. So this being in Cancer, let's talk about Cancer. Mm-hmm. What do you know about Cancer?
I think the first key word that comes to me is nourishment. And Cancer is a sign of the mother. And all of the signs refer to archetypes in our culture. And this one is the mother. And I think that probably most of you have a pretty good sense of mother straight out of the gate. And some of you, no matter what your relationship is with your mother, you're probably going to think two things. A sense of being cared for, and a sense of being protected. And those can play out in a lot of different ways. But those are the two primary things, is nurturing and protection.
Very good. Yeah, Cancer is an interesting sign. And first of all, it's a cardinal water sign. And water is about emotion. And cardinal, and I think it's really important to understand that Cancer is a cardinal sign because it makes it very strong. And one of the mistakes that I think people make a lot about the sign of Cancer is in our culture, we tend to think of emotion as weakness. We tend to think of sensitivity as weakness. And Cancer is a very strong sign. And I think a lot of people miss that point. And they think, oh, it's all about love and nurturing and sweetness. Well, it's that protection piece that you brought in, the protectiveness of the mother bear. We've got some fierce ability to protect in Cancer. I think that's just really important to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm. Another way to look at it too is that Cancer is, as you were saying, is in touch with your emotions. And it takes a lot of courage to be in touch with your emotions because it's not an easy thing to do or an easy way to be. And that is not always something we think of. We don't think of courage tied in with emotions, but actually it fundamentally is. And we kind of live in a world that runs away from its emotions most of the time. So this is a vital time to think about Cancer and how to get more in touch with your feelings. Whether that sounds appealing or not, it's something that we all must do.
Right. I think that's really important. I'm really glad you brought that in, just the idea of the courage, the courage that it takes to be sensitive, to really face that emotional depth. That's really interesting. Okay, are we ready to open that chart?
Sure. As I open this too, another thing you can think about when we're talking about Cancer is just, it is represented by the crab. So when you think of the crab, you think of the soft inside and then the hard outer shell. So that really helps kind of deliver the message pretty clearly. So
yeah, so not only, I'm glad you brought that in too. That's really important, Jenny. You know, not only is that the protection, when we think about Cancer, I tend to think about, the mother bear protecting her cubs, but it's that Cancer, that shell to protect the sensitivity itself, to protect the self. Huh.
Yeah.
It's an interesting sign, and it's a lot more important than I think people, somehow I think it is, because in our culture, sensitivity is discounted in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I mean, it all ties into our relationship with the feminine, this idea that we've been kind of overdoing the masculine for really, quite honestly, thousands of years in this culture. And this is the other side of like bringing in this more feminine, but by feminine does not mean weak.
No.
So it's bringing in this more receptive side, this ability to kind of step back and think about immersing yourself in water, and like kind of having this more nourishing aspect, and contemplating and being and having this quiet space to do those things so that you can replenish. And those are all kind of key phrases and things to think about with Cancer. And then all of us with this Cancer new moon, we're going to be looking at how do you take advantage of this energy, or where do you personally need to find nourishment in your life? So we'll get to that in a minute.
And where do you personally have to gather the courage to face your emotions? Yeah, that's really, really interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
So, and I mean, just one thing I'll add to that is like why gather the emotions? Why do this? Because that's where true connection comes in. That's where you can really bond with other people, and that's where you can really understand the wholeness of what we're living in. So, all right.
Okay, very good. Now let's look at what's happening at the same time as these two are coming together. And let me get my little pen together here. Okay, so here's the sun and the moon, 18 degrees Cancer. And what are the aspects we're looking at here?
Well, I guess let's just tackle the elephant in the room, which is that it isn't an opposition to Pluto. It's a little bit of a loose orb. It's almost 8 degrees difference, but nonetheless, there it is. And that's just kind of like this idea of like, hey, go nourish yourself, take a little respite, get a break, but don't forget that we're in these times of lots of shifting, and the ominous mountain is still in the background. Right. So it's still there. Right. And it has the Pluto there kind of intensifies what's happening with the Cancer new moon. So
an opposition, I always think of an opposition as, it gives clear sight. You know, as you're planting that seed for nurturing and protection, you have a clear view of your opponent, of what it is. You know, as you're planting that seed, keep your eye on what it is you need to either provide yourself or others with protection from.
Ooh, yeah, that was good, Laurie. What it made me think of was like potency. So that this respite you're taking, there's actually a little bit of a potency to it, that it's having an impact beyond just your immediate self. So
I think that's really important to look at. Okay, so you're very aware as you're planting that seed that there's something dark out there kind of opposing you, but you've got the vision of it. So that's a really good thing. And then there's some really nice aspects to this, aren't there?
Yeah, there's some nice, probably the most supportive one is the trine to Neptune.
Look at that.
So you've got Neptune in Pisces, trine in this Cancer. So where Cancer's, I always think of Cancer as kind of like the wellspring or the fresh water bubbling up to nourish everybody. And Pisces is the ocean. And so there's definitely a connection between the two of like, ultimately it comes from that one source of the ocean. But there's this nice watery flow here with Neptune.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's really sweet. I mean, that Neptune trining that moon really does, it gives you that idea of just as you're planting that seed, you know that that mountain, as you said, is opposing you. And yet you've got this gift of spirit, this gift of understanding a more mystical connection to the divine and to the collective.
Yeah, so it's kind of like you're taking action for yourself on this, like maybe this more self-oriented scale, but while you do that, you're also impacting this much more profound level that you may not even be aware of. But the fact of your actions matter, basically.
Right.
That's what that's
Right.
a statement
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. And then we also have a sextile to Uranus. So how would you think about that? I mean, I think of sextiles are opportunities, possibilities. You know, the difference between a sextile and a trine, and just for those of you who might be new to listening to us, the red lines that I put on the charts are always the challenges, the things that we have to really work hard at, or the challenges and clear vision. And then the blue lines are the softer, the opportunities. Sextiles are a 60-degree angle, and they bring in opportunities and possibilities. The trine, which is 120 degrees, I think of as just a gift. So yeah, the seed you're planting is gifting the collective, and you're receiving the gift from that mystical higher sense of oneness.
Yeah.
And then the Uranus brings in an opportunity.
Yeah.
An opportunity to wake up.
Yeah, I know we've talked a lot about Uranus and Taurus being this kind of awakener. I mean, Uranus standing alone is an awakener,
Right.
But in Taurus, like it's this, I keep coming back to it's the sign of our planet, Mother Nature. And so kind of one of my reads on the sextile to Uranus is like, hey, you know what? Like Mother Nature is doing this, being in relationship with everything all the time. And it's giving us a little template. So one of the ways to nourish yourself is to go out in nature and absorb what's happening. Just go and sit and absorb what's happening. And you will see with enough time, you will see like the truth of that. Like that everything is in relationship with everything else. And then it's about nurturing that. What else do you think of?
Well, as I'm looking at that, all I can think of is, you know, on my website and social media, I always put this little thing about a ritual, a new moon ritual. And what this makes me think of as I look at this is when you perform your new moon ritual for this Cancer new moon, do it outside with your naked feet on the ground, and do it with that whole oneness of the collective in mind. You know, do a ritual of bringing, you know, your own ability to protect and nurture to the world, because it needs to be done. There's a dark mountain on the other side that we're facing. And this moment in time, you can really take a little action. You know, it's the tiniest little actions that make all the difference in our lives. And it might not seem like you can do much about the dark difficulties of our world, but every little detail that you do, you know, the ripples of that go out.
Yeah, and that's precisely why now is a good time to look within, to, you know, face your emotions, to work with them, to accept them, to receive them as well.
To gather the courage to look at them. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Because the final other aspect that's a little well, no, I guess it's 5 degrees, but this does have a square to Chiron. And as Laurie, as you were speaking, that immediately made me think back to what we were saying earlier, just about the healing of the more masculine element by being in this, because Chiron is in Aries, which is about as Mars and masculine symbolically as you can get. So your small action of nourishing yourself, of working with your emotions, is your way of healing that that part that's really causing grievous wound in our society, and is a lot of what we're facing right now, to be honest. So.
That's really beautiful. I'm glad you brought that in. And yeah, just thinking of the seed that you're planting is an action that's being taken. And a square aspect always demands an action to be taken.
So that's the chart. I guess the only thing we're probably just like having, I know we haven't mentioned yet at all, is just probably most of you are looking at that Mars and Venus together in Leo, and it's not tied in by aspect to the new moon in Cancer, but at the same time, Mars and Venus are both in Leo, which is a sun-ruled sign. So it does have a connection to the sun in that way, that they're both doing the playful generosity of Leo while this other stuff's, while we're nourishing ourselves, it's also bringing in this idea of play.
Yeah. So enjoy that. Enjoy, I think that this is a new moon that can really be enjoyed. There's a sweetness to it. There's the gifts from Neptune, the opportunities from Uranus, the view and the action that you need to take. And yet there's such a nice softness to it. And then, with that playful piece, go to the beach, have some fun, hang out with your partner or your friends and enjoy that. This is a very, dramatic connection. And, I like seeing when Venus and Mars are together, one of the things I often think about is that Mars gives energy to Venus and Venus softens Mars. So they kind of create this little bubble of pleasure, relationship, connection.
Yeah, or the wholeness of yin and yang together in that playful. And that's kind of been a theme throughout our discussion today. So it really kind of brings that in, like bring that together and enjoy it.
I like this. I like this new moon. So do you have the date of the full moon?
Yeah, so we always talk about 2 full moons. The short version is, so in 2 weeks, we're going to have the full moon on July 23rd. That'll actually be a full moon in Aquarius. So that's the 1 month cycle, new moon to new moon. And then the other one, which is the year long, is not till January 17th. We will have a full moon in Cancer. That'll complete this 6 month cycle. So.
Yeah. So think about that, what the seed you're planting now on a short scale will be illuminated in 2 weeks, but the bigger picture will be illuminated there in 6 months.
Yeah. And you'll see the impacts of your efforts in those 2 windows of time, depending on what you're working with.
Right. So are we going to talk about how this impacts the different rising signs?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Let me, we don't need to be looking at this chart, I don't think, while we do that.
Yeah,
so
let's not do that.
Okay. Oh, okay. I was wondering why I couldn't stop it. You had to stop it.
That's
right.
So
if you are born, let me see, I've got to find where I have my information here. So if you have Aries rising, what's that going to tell us?
So if you have Aries rising, that means that Cancer is going to fall in your 4th house. So that means that your home is the place where you need to be thinking about respite and recharging and nourishing, is in your home space. So it might be something like set aside a space in your home for some quiet contemplation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, think about the 4th house also as your family. So, planting a seed of emotional support for your home and family, something along those lines. Now, if you have Taurus rising, this is going to fall in your 3rd house. So you're going to want to, plant your metaphorical seed in communications. Perhaps, maybe you need to begin some sort of a conversation, maybe with siblings, because that's also a 3rd house issue.
Yeah.
So perhaps, defending, protecting, caring for your siblings, you need to maybe plant a seed along those lines, or planting a seed around some writing or speech or conversation that you have to have.
Yeah. And I mean, and when you're doing all that, just notice which communications you're having feel nourishing and when which ones don't, and if you start tuning in, you can tell. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So Gemini rising is going to fall in your second house. And so this is a good time to just tune into your wealth of emotional resources that you have. This might also be a time to think about your relationship to money and like, does it trigger you? How does it, what works and what doesn't?
Right. Where is money and emotion connected? Where is money and family connected? And what do you need to plant a seed around that? Maybe you need to open a savings account for your grandchildren.
Yeah.
On a simple level, you can think about it that way. So there's many ways, think about what it is you need to start in that area.
Yeah.
So then if you've got Cancer rising, it's going to fall in your first house. So this is a very personal, and you plant your seed around a sense of showing up, like planting a seed for the self-expression of your emotions. Maybe you need to really show somebody your vulnerability.
Well, that's a good way to think about it. Yeah. And I think about this with Cancer in the first house, like it is vital that you recharge, because this is, if you have this placement, it means that you're absorbing emotions from other people a lot of the times. So it's really vital that you set aside time to recharge your own system. So I think that's key.
Right.
Yeah. How about Leo?
I think you're up for Leo. What do you say about Leo?
Well, Leo, I mean, with Leo, Cancer falls in the 12th house. So this is always that tricky house to talk about, because it's kind of this ethereal, behind the scenes house, or area of solitude, or area where you need to learn about compassion. But I mean, in the simplest sense, it could be what we were talking about earlier. Go and visit the ocean, lie on the beach, hear the waves, like that's...
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that idea. And, the other thing, you can think about it as a time to plant a seed of just emotional intelligence, in that hidden spot within yourself. Maybe it would be a time to start a dream journal, something like that, really finding a way to plant a seed to understand the emotions that you've really hidden. That's fascinating to think about. Okay, so if you've got Virgo rising, this is going to fall in your 11th house. And I think of that as, you want to plant a seed to develop or grow a nurturing, caring community. Maybe you could invite like-minded people to come begin a conversation of digging into your shared emotional space, or something along those lines.
Yeah. Or I was thinking about just tuning into like, which group of friends you feel nourished by and which ones you don't. And then just, just tuning into that and noticing, and then noticing like when you need more nourishing, that you're spending time with those that really help fill up your cup.
And I like that, because that makes me think of, we keep focusing on that this is the beginning of a cycle, but you said earlier, and we need to also remember there's an end to the cycle. So if you are in that position where you've got a community of friends that feels nurturing and one that doesn't, you can end one cycle to start another. That's one way to think about it.
Yeah. So with Libra, then you're thinking about your vocation. So, I was kind of thinking about like, again, like, how do you feel in your career? How is it working for you? How is it serving you? And then just taking simple steps. It doesn't have to be a big, crazy thing, just simple steps to how to make it more nourishing. I mean, maybe it's time to, bring in some plants into your workspace, or or something that can help you just feel a little more supported to be in touch with your emotional self while you're busy at work.
While you're busy at work. Yeah, with that, the Libra rising, that Cancer being in the 10th house, that place of career has to nurture you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a time to think about it. Does it nurture you? What can you do to bring that? I love that idea of just bringing plants in.
Yeah.
Have a, bring your kitten to work day.
Awesome.
Or maybe you want to start updating your resume.
Right.
If you realize you're in a vocation that is not supporting you on an emotional level, this might be the time to actually start a plan to change that.
Yeah.
As well.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you've got Scorpio rising, this is going to fall in your 9th house. And you want to think here about planting a seed to increase your sensitivity to other cultural identities. That's how I would think of it. It's like open your heart and grow your natural protective instincts in that area of worldview, different cultures, different ways of viewing the world.
Mm-hmm. And I think with Scorpio rising too, that means that you have a water sign as your, as you're rising, and then also in the 9th house. So I think about just the wisdom to be gained by being in tune with your emotions. So it's kind of like it's like taking a learning course in how to embody your emotions more. There's definitely lots of meditation programs out there that teach you how to understand where you're feeling your emotions in your body, and it's quite powerful.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's great. The other thought I had about it was, plant a seed for, start planning a trip to visit your family, or begin creating a family tree, or researching your family legacy, that whole learning about the family with the Cancer in the 9th house.
Yeah.
There's
Nice.
so many different ways to think about these things.
Yeah.
It's really lovely.
Yeah. So we trust you'll come up with your own too. So
right. And you can always leave notes and let us know what you actually did.
Yeah. So Sagittarius, with Sagittarius, it means that you have Cancer in your 8th house, which is that, again, one of those houses a little trickier to understand, but it's often where other people's kind of unclaimed baggage is kicking around, and you find yourself having to kind of work around it and kind of deal with it. So I was thinking about just learning how to set boundaries for optimal health,
perfect.
But even as I'm like thinking about boundaries, it's like even boundaries, like in cells, they actually have water to them. So that these are not walls. This is still got a kind of a soft skill to it. This isn't a harsh, line. It's more just, it's sort of semi-permeable. So it's kind of an interesting concept to think about how to deal with that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was thinking in terms of, planting a seed for growing understanding around other people's deep sensitivities, around those issues that we think of as the baggage the baggage we have to navigate, that other people have. Other people's values, other people's baggage. Fascinating. Okay, so if you've got Capricorn rising, then this new moon is falling in your 7th house, and the 7th house is about intimate partnerships or intimate partnerships of some sort. It doesn't have to be just your spouse. It can be your therapist, or your co-workers, or equal partnerships of some sort is what the 7th house is about. So here we're going to plant that seed of developing close emotional bonds with individuals. So nice. Plan a connection with your partner. Plan something that's going to really deepen that connection, or start a new path toward a deeper connection.
Yeah, and then whatever you do with that, just make sure that there's some quiet time involved in that. It's not all just doing that. Some of it's just about the being quiet together and allowing for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's important. And that's important for sure.
Yeah.
Huh.
So Aquarius means that Cancer lands in your sixth house. This is the sixth house of daily routines and practices and your habits. Can also be a place of where you're training in something. So it's a great time to train and nourishing yourself and nurturing yourself through some sort of daily practice. So I was thinking something like, like taking up like paddleboarding or doing something where you can find more flow in your life and just have a little bit be in that being space a little more.
That's great. Yeah. I think that's great. Realizing with Cancer in your sixth house, realizing how much your emotions are impacted by your daily routines. Notice how exercise really shifts and changes your emotional state. So starting some sort of a practice that will increase and strengthen your connection to emotion, to your own and just emotional intelligence in general.
Yeah. Just find another thing that's tied in with the water element here in Cancer is just flow, like something that brings you in a flow state. Right. And just being physically on water with the waves, like that is a flow state, like, natural version of it. So,
any of those exercise routines you can do that involve water will be the best. Paddleboarding, I like that. So if you've got Pisces rising, this is going to fall in your fifth house, and you're going to be thinking about planting a seed for, just bringing your emotions to your creative endeavors, or to, just the love that you give to others. The fifth house is very much, to me, about how we give love. So finding a way to really express deep caring and support and protection to children, grandchildren, or creative projects in general, how you give love and giving it from a deeply emotional, nurturing place.
When I really think about it, it's your emotions can be released through those creative activities. So it's also really important for your emotional well-being to find out how to express those things, especially again with Pisces rising, we're talking about a fairly strong watery focus. So that's a really great thing to do with those pent-up emotions.
I think this is fascinating, and I've really enjoyed this conversation with you, Jenny. Is there anything we need to say to wrap this up?
No, this is great, Laurie. I appreciate it too. I hope you all get something out of it, and take good care of yourself.
Absolutely. And keep your eye on that Pluto, but enjoy the process. And you can find Jenny at hiddenpathastrology.com. You can find me at astrolore.org. Patreon is a great place to find Astrolore and to get these and a lot of other videos and communications. So track me down there. And thank you all. And thank you, Jenny.
Yes, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.